What's going on, guys? It's Seth back with another Defense Wins Fantasy podcast, part of the Fantasy-Holics Podcast Network. This week, we're going to start diving in division by division. We're going to go through some busts, some breakout players, and players to watch. Maybe put on your watch list, maybe think about trading for, maybe just holding off. Let's see how it all plays out. So to start off, let's go with the reigning Super Bowl champions division with the NFC West. And I'm going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. And we're going to start with our bust player. It's J.J. Watt. Now, this might not come as a surprise to a lot of people, but he's done pretty much. He's had a wonderful career. And let's just understand that the ride that this defensive powerhouse player has given us fantasy owners over the years. I mean, he is just an absolute dominant force when he was with the Texans, just year after year, outscoring nearly anybody on the defensive side for sure for years over time, but even most of the offensive players as well. I mean, he just was so dominant. But constant injuries and his age has finally caught up to old JJ. And it's a sad time that happens with fantasy football. It's just one of those things that we have to remember all the good old days that he gave us. Years ago in my league, little story about him for you. J.J. Watt was traded for Aaron Rodgers straight up. We all thought that it was a terrible trade. Well, J.J. Watt ended up outscoring Aaron Rodgers 3 of the next 4 seasons. Mind you, defensive end to quarterback. And honestly has had a pretty good long career. That guy got a lot of value out of him. Now, sure, Aaron Rodgers is still playing and has been the MVP the last 2 years. But there was a lull there for Rodgers where we really thought that it was a no-brainer that Watt maybe won the trade, the guy that got Watt in the trade. But longevity of quarterbacks is still something to go for, but you have to understand that the positional scarcity that J.J. Watt brought at a powerhouse defensive end was well worth it for that owner at that point in time. So it's one of those trades that everybody kind of scratches their heads and is like, are you serious? But long term, it got him a championship or 2. I can't remember if he got 2 while he still had J.J. on his team, and it worked out well. And as for the Aaron Rodgers owner, he is still yet to win a championship, and he's actually traded Aaron Rodgers away at this point in time. Went for some younger talent. So another, thought of, hey, the grass isn't always greener, and maybe the smart pick isn't the right pick all of the time. So, but going back to the overall bust of J.J. Watt, he can't stay healthy at this point in time. He'll have some flash-in-the-pan games, and if he's still on your roster, maybe try to trade for him. But I think everybody knows that this is pretty much JJ's last year, really riding for a Super Bowl. Only thing I could see him doing if he doesn't end up retiring at the end of this year is maybe he goes to Pittsburgh and is a positional, rotational defensive end on their team, playing with TJ just because they can at that point in time. But as far as a fantasy defensive end, it's the sun has set on JJ. Not so on TJ. I would hang on to him if I were you. Breakout player this year for the Arizona Cardinals, I am going with Zaven Collins. He's a second-year linebacker, drafted in the first round last year, the second linebacker in so many years that the Cardinals took in the first round. Of course, Isaiah Simmons being the one before that. He was honestly one of my favorite prospects coming out of the draft last year, but when he was drafted to Arizona, I was not too happy. They had a crowded linebacker core. I just didn't think that the fit was going to be there, and partially was right. He didn't do anything really as far as a rookie year goes. Very little playing time. Really struggled, I think, to maybe pick up the defense. Or it might be just how that coaching staff goes with the defense there anyway, because Isaiah Simmons kind of was on the same track his rookie year. Didn't really come into play, and he was like the 8th pick overall until kind of later down into the season. And then last year, Isaiah had a pretty good year. So the hope is that Zaven kind of follows that same path. On top of that, their leading tackler linebacker, Jordan Hicks, is now gone. So that allows Zaven to walk into that middle linebacker position, stay on the field for all 3 downs because he's athletic as all get out and can make sure that he can cover linebackers and slot players. Did it very well in college. And hopefully that all of his low numbers were just due to the low snap counts, Having the ability to get that year under your belt, let the speed of the game, let your mind kind of catch up to that speed. And like I said, do the same thing that Isaiah Simmons did, who had a good year last year. Tackles are there to be had for the Arizona defense. Their 2 safeties both had over 100 tackles last year. So they have to get past the linebacker for the safeties to tackle them. So just wrap up, take them down. So hopefully Zaven Collins is a guy that if you don't have him on your team, the owner that drafted him last year is probably not very high on him because, he was BAD bad. And once again, look at the snap counts. He wasn't on the field to make the plays. It wasn't that he was just terrible while he was out there. He was just not out there very much. So the opportunity is going to increase this year. They put the draft capital there that he's going to be starting in this defense. And one can only imagine if he's able to take away 100-plus tackles this year, that's going to be a really big return on investment at this point in time with Zaven Collins. Now, the player to watch off my Arizona Cardinals here is Jalen Thompson, one of the safeties. I just talked about the 2 safeties having over 100 tackles last year. He is one of them, obviously. He had a breakout year last year. So just to put it in perspective, the first 2 years of his career, he had about 60 total tackles. Last year, he had 120. He had 3 picks, 7 more passes broken up. He plays alongside fellow safety superstar Budda Baker, who also played in all 17 games, but he was beaten up a little bit. And Budda has just been an absolute force when it comes to tackling the ball carrier. He's been one of the leading tacklers in the league, not just safeties, but leading tacklers in the league the last few years. But he had a multitude of small injuries. He did leave a game early with a concussion, but he was fighting groin, he was fighting ankles. He kind of just a lot of stuff that that probably slowed him down a little bit. Well, Jalen definitely took advantage of that and accounted for those 120 tackles. But he's also, once again, on my watch list, not necessarily as a, hey, go grab this guy, he's going to be a stud. I'm more of like 2 safeties performing that high shows a lot of weakness up front on this defense, and you're kind of hoping that, Zaven's going to help out with that a little bit, and that probably won't have that kind of opportunity. It's very rare to see 2 safeties with that high tackle rate on the same team. That's significant. But I'd be hesitant to trade for this player at this point in time because it's kind of a one-year wonder on his value. You kind of want to see it. Maybe within the first few weeks that you can kind of verify that. But his value right now is at an all-time high. One of the top 5 safeties in the league last year as far as scoring goes. So if he comes out really hot in the first few games and you see, okay, this is continuing on, this is for real, his value is not going to be much different than what that owner is going to want for him now. Unless that owner is also kind of a little bit sketchy and not really sure about it. You can kind of feel it out a little bit, but at this point, I'm more of maybe put him on my watch list, maybe just kind of let's see how it plays out a little bit because the repeat of that year is going to be highly unlikely, but you never know. Maybe he's going to take over the tackle numbers for Budda. Maybe Buddha's lost a step. I don't know. It's hard to tell with how last year went. That's why it's my player to watch. Moving on, we'll go ahead and go to the Super Bowl champion LA Rams. And we'll start with my bust player for them. If you've been listening to my podcast, you probably already know where I'm going. It is newly acquired middle linebacker Bobby Wagner. He is over the age for drop-off linebackers. Worst fantasy output in 5 years is what he had last year. And that was with 138 tackles. He still had a drop-off point-wise. But what really makes me nervous is that no linebacker for the Rams has had over 100 tackles in the past 3 seasons. They've had fairly good linebackers. You know, maybe not all be at the middle linebacker or inside linebacker on their 3-4 defense. A lot of it's probably because Aaron Donald is just destroying people up front. They've got great run defense. They've got good D tackles. They've got good D ends. Aaron Donald's kind of all of that. They don't get to the linebacker core on the inside very often. I don't see Bobby Wagner going for a significant tackle number. If he does break the 100 tackle plane, it's going to be barely over it, in my opinion. I don't see 138 anywhere close to this guy. And the defense isn't looking for a hero. And Wagner's not looking to be a hero when he goes to this team. He's looking to get another ring. He got let go from the Seahawks. He's on a team with a better offense, which means the defense isn't going to be on the field nearly as much as he was with the Seahawks the last couple of years. If you remember, Russ missed a ton of games last year, and they were not very good on offense. Wagner's not going to be a hero for your fantasy team. He is going to have his drop-off. If you have him on your team, I would be testing the trade waters. For people that don't realize that the linebackers on the Rams are not big-time playmakers for this defense, you might get that he's going to the Rams. It's a match made in heaven, yada, yada, yada. I can finally have Bobby Wagner on my team. Trade him, get some value, be happy. Breakout player for the Rams is one that you might not necessarily know. Going with the defensive tackle, Greg Gaines. Yeah, no, I'm not going Aaron Donald for the breakout player. He's been broken out for years now. Greg had his best season last year. Young career, going into his 4th year, and he had 55 tackles and 4.5 sacks coming from the D tackle spot. That was on limited snaps because he shared the spotlight with Sebastian Joseph Day, who's now moved on to the LA Chargers. So he is no longer there. He does still have to deal with reps with A'Shawn Robinson, but last year A'Shawn was there as well. So at worst, it goes from a 3-man rotation to a 2-man rotation. Even if they bring in a third guy there for rotation, Sebastian Joseph Day was by far the lead dog, and I see Greg Gaines being the lead dog going forward. He's on a team-friendly contract, which the Rams really need. He's in line for the starting role. Once again, Aaron Donald requires so much attention. I look for Gaines to improve on his tackles and his sack numbers coming into this year, number 4. Biggest concern, as I said, is that he's still probably going to have some rotational time splits. But this dude was averaging 13 points a game last year with limited snaps. 55 tackles from the D tackle spot is a good number, and that's with limited playing time. I expect this guy to be 65, 75 tackles this year and hopefully getting up around the 7 sack mark just because of more time on the field. And once again, when you're playing next to a guy like Aaron Donald, they're going to have a tendency to forget about you because they're so focused on him. That leads me to my player to watch. This one is Aaron Donald. No doubt, right? He's got to be on the list somewhere. Well, there's a concern with Donald maybe at the end of his dominating run. Regardless of the fact that he's looking to redo his contract and is at peace with walking away, which makes you nervous. But he is J.J. Watt 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. The end could come swift for Donald. The big thing with D tackles is because it's more strength, as I talked about on my last podcast, they normally have a little bit longer shelf life. I don't know which category to put Aaron into because he plays D end and D tackle. D ends drop off that 31, 32, where D tackles are still stable around 34. There's no secret Aaron Donald's got a lot of strength to him, but he's also got a lot of speed, and that might be undervalued. If it starts to drop off a little bit, he might not be able to beat those inside guys as easily. So most of what I want to talk about with him is not necessarily about his contract walking away this year, but if you're a team that is, and be honest with yourself, not going to be in the playoff hunt this year, slight rebuild, maybe on the downtrend, maybe you are in a full rebuild mode, but you have Aaron Donald, this would be the time to move on from him and try to get some high-end draft capital from a team that is trying to win it all this year. Get some up-and-coming players. Like I said, he is a guy that could command the value that a J.J. Watt had commanded. So don't think that you can't get some significant players for him. Once again, especially if you're doing scoring formats that are equal to offensive and defensive. But even if you're not, if you have D tackles that you play, Aaron Donald is far and away the best. And he's been the best. And everybody that's playing in your league knows that he is a unicorn at this position that can win you weeks, that can just dominate the competition. You're going to outscore your opponent's D tackle probably 5 to 10 points every single week with him. So the value's there to be able to get him traded for some very high capital coming back at you. And this is a great D lineman draft. It's deep. Not necessarily any massive stars, but there's opportunities to get some good players, whether that be via draft capital or established young players for a stud like Aaron Donald. I would be moving on from him. Once again, if you're in a playoff, if you are a team that has a chance to win it all, sink or swim with him. You're going down with the ship. He's going to play until you get that championship. I get it, and that's what you should do. But if your team, even if it's halfway through the season and your team's starting to tail off, or maybe the writing's on the wall, you just don't have it, don't leave yourself holding the bag. Get something for him before the significant drop-off happens, and then people don't want him. Just make sure you don't miss out on that. So moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, who had quite an interesting offseason for sure. Good thing about their defense is it's probably going to be on the field all the time. Now, they did move on from Bobby Wagner. They got this guy named Jordan Brooks who had almost 200 tackles last year. So he's not on any of my lists because I already think he's got a breakout and there's no reason to watch him because all you're going to do is see him make tackles. But he's definitely the star of this defense. But as far as breakout goes, now this was a tough team to do this with because they didn't really invest a whole lot in the draft on defense or in free agency. They kind of have a lot of what I would feel like is kind of ho-hum players. Now, Pete Carroll normally gets the best out of some of these players, so I'm sure there'll be somebody that comes out of the woodwork in the first few weeks. So I'd keep an eye on this team for that. But the breakout player that I'm going to talk about is Boye Mafe. Defensive end. He's a rookie out of Minnesota. There's not a lot of talent in front of him to get him to playing time on Seattle. In the last 19 college games, Boye Mafe had 11.5 sacks and 15 tackles for loss. He's got 4.53 speed, 38-inch vertical, and he's 6'4", 261 pounds. He's built to come off the edge as an outside linebacker / defensive end. Kind of that Jason Taylor build, which has turned more into the 3-4 outside linebacker. So he gets a little bit more tackles and maybe a little bit more coverage, but gets that defensive end, category so that he can get that more tackles than a normal defensive end would get, still have the sack opportunities, but you're going to get a little bit, maybe a higher floor than you would normally with just a defensive end. The big thing with him, though, is playing time. It's one of those things you need to pay attention during preseason, need to understand what team he's running with and see. They might start him out as a pass rush specialist, which they do with a lot of these guys. But if he shows the athleticism with 4.53 speed to be able to hang with tight ends, with covering the zone on the slot, he's probably going to get some more time on the field. And I think it's going to come sooner rather than later. So keep an eye on this guy. I doubt that he gets drafted high. If you have rookie drafts, he might not even been drafted in your rookie drafts, but it's a guy that I keep focused on. Once again, Boye Mafe, rookie out of Minnesota, defensive end for the Seahawks. Now, looking at our bust player. Not sure if you guys are kind of on the same wavelength with me on this one or not, but to me, it's Jamal Adams, safety. Listen, this guy hasn't played more than 12 games the last 2 years. He's a lot of talk and not very good at backing it up. He had 0 sacks last year. His playmaking ability has been lacking since he got that big new contract. And on top of that, his tackles have leveled out around 85 a year. It's good for a safety, but it's not top tier. And you're expecting top tier out of Jamal Adams' namesake. His fantasy points have decreased every year for the past 4 years. Every year for the past 4 years. Tread lightly with this guy. I think that he's got his payday. He's made his money. And he just doesn't seem to have that fire, that desire to dominate, to win, to want to go out there every week for his team. We'll see. You know, there's a lot of tackles that have been vacated. 138 from Bobby Wagner last year. Are they going to put him more in the box? Maybe. I don't know. But the way that I've watched him play the last few years has made me not feel great. So once again, tread lightly. If you're trading for him, don't overpay. Don't be the Seattle Seahawks when you trade for him. Don't give up 2 first-rounders. Jesus, man. I mean, looking back on that, holy cow, the Jets did something right, you know? But he is an okay safety. He's going to have numbers, but he's not going to be what you think he's going to be. So feel free to try to move on from him while his name value still has a strong go. But I wouldn't be the guy that you'd be trading him to. Not for anything of full value. So that moves on to the player to watch. And ironically, it's the other safety, Quandre Diggs. Now, unlike Adams, since arriving in Seattle, his points have only increased. As far as fantasy points go, and the scoring system, as I've stated, that we use 2 podcasts ago, you can go listen to that. He went up 40 points from 2019 to 2020. And 50 more points from 20 to 21. Quandre has made plays for the Seahawks, intercepting 13 passes in 2.5 seasons. He's also increased his tackles to 94 last year. So he had more tackles than Adams had more interceptions than Adams had. And I think that he's the safety that you want to own when we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks secondary. He has that kind of want to it factor. He's the guy that you feel the best about. And without that fire, without that want to, you're just hoping. You really are. You're just hoping that you're going to have somebody that's going to give you day in and day out what you're wanting. Like I said, Quandre Diggs had 5 picks last year. Jamal Adams had 2, and that was like a good year for him. So don't hear what I'm not saying. Jamal Adams is a fine safety, but he's not top tier, which is what the owner that has him is going to want for him. You could go out to the Quandre Diggs owner and probably get him for a cheaper price than Jamal Adams. And I think he's only got more room to grow. Once again, 2 paths are going on here. Quandre's going up, Jamal's going down. Take the path that's still on the up and up. Adams is not the guy to have in the Seattle secondary. So that brings us to our final team, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. Now, there's been so much talk about them on offense with the Debo kind of holdout, the Jimmy Garoppolo getting surgery, so now he can't be traded. Is Trey Lance really the answer? How many running backs do you need on your team before, you run out, because they always seem to have so many injuries at the running back position? Nobody's been really talking about the defense too much. Well, there's been a little bit of a reporter-player chat going on. We'll just call it a chat back and forth. But we'll start with the breakout player. Now, this might not be a quote-unquote breakout, but it's Dre Greenlaw, linebacker. It's more of a re-breakout, if you will. After only playing 3 games last year, in those 3 games, he did average 18.6 points, enough to be the 11th best linebacker last year had it been projected through the entire season. So he's a guy that knows, 1, how to get to the football, 2, he had an interception in just those 3 games. So he's a very, very capable player, and he has shown it in the past. He had 21 tackles, a pick, and so that's pretty solid, 3-game sample size. He was dominant in 2020 as well. He's the guy that plays next to Fred Warner and takes care of business. Both of them get their tackles. Both of them take care of everything coming up the middle. They both stay out on passing downs. Greenlaw is posed for another boom year, and it's one of those where the owner, or he might be on waivers because he got hurt and he barely played last year. Little caveat on him is that he was hurt in the playoffs a little bit, and so he's still nursing that some. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But he's a guy that can get low value, big output on the field. And I think that he's going to have another great year. He is in the final year of his contract, so there's even more incentive to stay on the field and play well. Going on to our bust player. The 49ers have a really good defense. So when we talk about fantasy players, not very often does it also align with a player that's just not been very good for the team. Normally it's just a guy that's more of a role player, so he doesn't get the value or the tackles. He's taking on 2 blockers, so he's not getting everything that you expect. This isn't the case with Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle, who is the guy I was referring to that's been having a little bit of a spat with a reporter lately. Go ahead and look it up. It's a bit of a mess, but he's coming off an ACL injury, so he did get hurt last year, 2nd year in the league. If you remember, they traded DeForest Buckner to the Indianapolis Colts for the 13th overall pick, which they, I think, ended up moving 1 spot back and getting Javon Kinlaw, who has not, in any way, shape, or form, replaced DeForest Buckner on that defense. And it just looks like that this has all the makings of a swing and a miss as far as draft capital goes. I don't think that he's going to be at least fantasy relevant at any point in his career. I think that he's probably going to be an okay role player, but it's kind of got a lot of Solomon Thomas feel to it, and Solomon Thomas was a better player than he was. And it just kind of is one of those, maybe trade him for what you can at this point if you have him on your team, because you probably held him since you drafted him. I doubt that a lot of people had picked him up after he'd gotten dropped just because his namesake maybe, but he hasn't done anything to prove that, especially when we're talking fantasy value, to prove that he's going to be anything of a force on a defense. He's playing next to very good defensive players, great linebackers, phenomenal DNs, and it's still just hasn't come to fruition. Now, albeit he did get hurt last year, but that to me is even more so why I would stay away from him. He's going to go into his 4th year coming off an ACL injury, so he's not going to be 100%. I know that players come back and play, but they're really never 100% until that following year. And now they're going to be based on, are we going to pick up a 5th-year option on a guy that has really shown us nothing? So at this point, before the 49ers make the decision to move on from him, find another player on your team. He probably still has some trade value. It might not be great, but something's better than nothing at this point in time. And you can just, call it a swing and a miss. It is what it is. It happens all the time. Nobody bats 1,000, and just move on. So my player to watch for the 49ers has a lot to do with Dre Greenlaw. And it's Azeez Ashire. He performed great in the absence of Greenlaw last year, but he also had big weeks when Greenlaw was there. In 13 games, Shire had 102 tackles, an interception, 2 sacks, and 9 tackles for a loss. He's the kind of guy that I think that showed what he had in backup play when he came in, but he is going to have fantastic standalone value. He signed a $3.9 million one-year deal this offseason. So there's that long-term value that kind of is will he, won't he? But if you remember, Dre Greenlaw is also up at the end of this year for contract. They will sign one of these guys at the end of this year, and the other one will go to free agency. Not to say that that's a bad thing. If it's Greenlaw or Shire that goes to free agency, they could sit themselves in a middle linebacker role without a Fred Warner next to him and just soak in the tackles. Places that I feel like might be ready to start getting a new middle linebacker might be the Minnesota Vikings. They've got Eric Kendricks there. It's been great for many, many years, but he is getting up in age. The Miami Dolphins are looking for a guy next to Jerome Baker, so not probably as beneficial as some of the other ones. The Patriots are still always looking for a new middle linebacker, which always has a lot of value for them. There's plenty of places that somebody could go. But I think that for either of these guys, know what you got. I would say that staying would probably be more beneficial just because they know, oh my goodness, the New York Jets. Mosley out there is 31 years old, middle linebacker. Robert Sala's defense. Oh my gosh, match made in heaven. One of those two guys will probably be a New York Jet at the start of the 23 season. That one just makes too much sense for it to actually work out. So, but with that being said, Shire is one of those guys that I think that you're going to really see early on how they want to use him in the defense. If he's not getting any reps, hold on until about halfway through the season, then offer a trade to the guy that has him if he hasn't dropped him by that point and not knowing that he's going to be a free agent and there's going to be that opportunity. If he is getting the tackles, maybe Greenlaw is a guy that's fading off and they will not re-sign him next year. But either way, it is definitely a situation and a player to watch because, as I said, even in the games that Greenlaw was there and Fred Warner were there, Shire had very good value, up into almost 20 points a game in some of those instances. And the one-year deal is kind of let's make sure it wasn't a one-hit wonder kind of thing. I think that you focus on the linebacker core for the 49ers, you can't go wrong. They got a lot of good players. They've continued to have a lot of good players. It just seems like they just find great linebackers, and it just is always there. And it's been multiple different coaching staffs, but it just seems like the 49ers have good linebackers, and that's just the way it is every single year. So that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to go through this week. Now, as I stated, we're going to go through every division. We're going to continue to go through with breakouts, busts, and players to watch. If there is a certain player that you want my opinion on, if there is a player that you think that I'm dead wrong on, I'd love to hear about it, because the fact of the matter is I love looking at the stats. I love making sure that what information I'm giving you is information that I would use myself. It's the value that I would give and understand and process and make sure that, hey, I'm setting you up to win. We all have lives. It's hard to focus on defensive players as well as offensive players, especially in the offseason like this. So let me do it for you. Just come in every week, sit by the campfire, listen to good old Seth give you a story or two about some players, why they're good, why they're more valuable, and then you go pick them up and blow your teammates away, league mates away, and make sure that they know you mean business. Defense wins fantasy, guys. As always, make sure that you watch or listen to our other podcast, the Fat Boys Dynasty podcast, on a new time this week, 1 week only. Should be coming out, I believe, on Saturday. So maybe even Friday night if you're lucky. So make sure you guys get a listen in on them. As always, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook. We're currently going through a lot of our boom bust picks for the year. So make sure that you give us a like and follow there and communicate with us. You can personal message us on there if you have any questions about your league, trade information. If you got you're not really sure this way or that way, we've got a team, an army, if you will, of people that are standing by, waiting to assist you in every need that you have when it comes to fantasy football. So until next week, this has been Seth Berger with Defense Wins Fantasy. We'll see y'all next Thursday.
This podcast has been presented by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network.